May 25th, 1979. Manhattan woke under the early morning haze, the streets alive with the usual clatter of subway screeches and distant car horns, a city that never sleeps yet. On this morning, something silent slipped through the cracks. 6-year-old Ethan Pat's backpack snug on his shoulders walked alone for the first time to his bus stop. 2 blocks, a distance his parents had trusted, a distance that would become the stage for a singular disappearance. No one saw the shadow that watched from the corner, the small nondescript bodega where the bell never rang that day. Whispers in the neighborhood would later speak of a figure who lingered just long enough too long. By mid-morning, Independence Plaza School noticed his absence. The first-grade class missing a bright-eyed boy. The files would later read, child not present, whereabouts unknown, fate undetermined. And milk cartons would carry his face nationwide. Have you seen this child? An image frozen in grainy black and white eyes, wide, innocent, smiling. An emblem of hope turned haunting. False sightings emerged, strangers claiming to be him. Fleeting shadows on stoops and subway stairs. Stories passed quietly among neighbors, growing with each retelling. Some say they saw him wandering in the streets, a boy lost in a city that had forgotten him for a moment. The city carried on, unaware, unknowing. Yet in hushed corners, mothers clutched their children tighter. Fathers cast wary glances down empty sidewalks. The disappearance of a child, the Milk Carton Boy, etched a lingering unease into the concrete veins of Manhattan. Eaton's story, though, beginning on a single morning, would stretch across decades. A mystery that refused to fade. Whispers of the unseen. Shadows in the archival files. Confessions whispered long before they would be confirmed. This is the tale of a boy who walked into legend before he even reached the bus stop. A case that would change how a nation saw its children, and how it would remember them forever. May 1979. Manhattan hummed with its usual rhythm. Street vendors shouting over the rumble of subway trains' tires skidding over wet asphalt from an early spring drizzle. The city alive yet indifferent. 1,000 lives intertwining, each person a story most unnoticed. Yet for one family on the Lower East Side, this morning would become a fracture in time. Ethan Pat, 6 years old, prepared for his first solo walk to the school bus stop, 2 blocks from his apartment on West Broadway. His mother, Julie, had packed his backpack the night before lunch, neatly wrapped his favorite action figure tucked inside. Small shoes polished his hair, combed just so. The morning sun glinting off the damp streets, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and twist unnaturally. The Independence Plaza School, a cluster of brick buildings with iron gates and echoing hallways, waited as always. Teachers arranging books, children chattering, a normal day on the surface. Yet a singular absence would rip through the routine. A child's chair left empty, a desk untouched. The files would later note student absent, unaccounted for, no known reason. Neighborhood whispers often spoke of the city's undercurrent, rumors of shadows on stoops, strange figures lingering near familiar corners. Folklore passed among children, tales of vanished kids, spirits wandering in the subway tunnels, mothers warning watch the streets, never walk alone, words repeated with an edge of fear yet dismissed as superstition, until the reality pierced through. Fact-layer police reports would later document calls from frantic parents, notes from the patrol logs reading child missing, last seen heading to bus stop, witnesses scarce, no leads, case escalated, neighbors recalling small oddities, a stranger loitering near the bodega, the bell silent, deliveries left untouched, the hum of the city masking the singular horror unfolding. Eaton's father, Stanley, retraced his son's route later that morning. Pavement cracks he had walked himself 1,000 times seemed suddenly unfamiliar. The corners sharper, the alleys darker, the city a maze rather than a grid, a pulse of anxiety thrumming through the streets. Folklore layer stories emerged quickly. Children claiming to see Eaton in the periphery, a flash of red backpack near the subway stairs. Rumors of a boy who appeared and disappeared like a ghost. Urban legends coalescing from fear and truth, a spectral narrative intertwining with the cold reality. Milk cartons would later carry his image nationwide, a face suspended in time, eyes wide, a frozen smile. Parents everywhere taught their children beware, notice, remember. The nation confronted the fragility of innocence. The city itself seemed complicit and different, yet the missing boy's presence permeated everything, a lingering aura of uncertainty. Shopkeepers whispered about the bodega where Hernandez would later confess. Neighbors recounted shadows' movements, misremembered events that didn't add up, traces of memory blending with myth. Fact layer. The disappearance triggered searches that spanned blocks, streets, rooftops. Police interviews cataloged dozens of sightings, most false, a few that lingered in the mind. Jose Ramos, a friend of Eaton's former babysitter, became a person of interest. The investigation stretched thin. By 2000, the boy was declared legally dead. Files archived. The trail seemed to vanish, yet nothing truly ended. The ambient hum of Manhattan, once routine, now carried an edge of suspense. Every corner, every stoop, every flicker of light a question mark. The city itself a character in this story, alive, indifferent, haunting. Folklore layer neighborhood tales persisted. The Milk Carton Boy appearing in dreams, fleeting glimpses in alleyways, whispers in playgrounds. A myth formed from grief and fear, a city collectively haunted by its lost child. In these streets a motif was born. Shadows stretching long before sunrise. Absences that could not be accounted for. The ordinary becoming uncanny. Eaton's Walk, 2 blocks long, transformed into a corridor of suspense, a threshold between innocence and the abyss. And so Manhattan in May 1979, ordinary yet unknowable. A city teeming with lives yet holding one child's fate in its folds. The context is set, the world on the edge of realization. The singular disappearance about to ripple through decades. The morning stretched into afternoon, May 25, 1979. Manhattan's streets continued their rhythm, yet for the Patz family time had fractured. Julie Patz called the school repeatedly, each ring unanswered, each heartbeat accelerating. The secretary's voice finally spoke. "We haven't seen him today. He didn't arrive." The words landing like stones, impossibly heavy, impossible to process. Police reports would later catalog the first frantic hours. Notes reading, "Child last seen 800 a.m. walking to bus stop. No witnesses observed abduction." Initial canvassing yielded no immediate results. Files marked with the stark language of law enforcement, cold, factual, yet failing to capture the dread enveloping a family. Fact layer witnesses later recalled fleeting images. A small figure near the bodega at the corner of West Broadway and Prince Street. A man seen watching the sidewalks. Brief encounters, shadows in the periphery, gone before recognition could settle. Police notes referenced possible suspect seen lingering near bus stop. Unknown male age, approximately late teens, early 20s. Neighborhood mothers whispered warnings as the day dragged on. Eyes scanning every passerby, every rustle of paper or bag across the pavement. The city's usual indifference now sharpened into a palpable tension. Blocks familiar only hours before now seemed alien. Each stoop a potential hiding place. Each alleyway a possibility. Folklore layer. Rumors began almost immediately. Children telling tales of a boy who disappeared. Sightings on rooftops, glimpses through windows. Whispers of an unseen hand, of a shadow following his small feet. The Milk Carton Boy. A moniker that would become legend, passed orally from neighbor to neighbor, from playground to playground, a myth born from fear and truth intertwined. By evening, the national press had begun to pick up the story. The New York Times ran early headlines: "Child missing in Lower Manhattan. Parents fear abduction." Journalists scouring the neighborhood, pen in hand, eyes wide. Descriptions of Eaton's small frame, blue jacket, red backpack. Photographs printed grainy yet haunting. The city's gaze sharpened. Fact layer police continued to follow leads. Hundreds of calls flooded precincts, dozens of tips cataloged, some fleeting, some credible, many false. One man, Jose Ramos, emerged as a potential suspect, friend of Eaton's former babysitter. Files note Ramos interviewed, no corroborative evidence, leads exhausted, frustration mounting, trail growing cold. The Patz family waited, alternating between hope and despair. Streets patrolled repeatedly, photographs posted, flyers distributed. The boy's face multiplied in neighborhoods, stores, subways. Citizens scanning milk cartons, hoping for recognition. A national experiment in collective vigilance. A nation learning to see what it had once overlooked. Folklore layer. In whispered corners of the city, tales twisted the facts into legend. The boy seen in subway tunnels, walking with ethereal grace, shadows moving in the peripheral vision of late-night commuters. A child caught between memory and myth, reality and fear. Some claimed to feel his presence near familiar streets, as if the city itself carried him. By 1980, the story had solidified. Milk cartons became the emblem of national concern. Have you seen this child? A question echoing in diners, grocery stores, apartment hallways. The boy's disappearance catalyzing the first real movement in public consciousness about missing children. Fact-layer government documents confirm the societal impact. President Ronald Reagan would later declare May 25th as National Missing Children's Day 1983. Legislation and nonprofits emerged. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children founded. Eaton's singular disappearance influencing systemic change. A private tragedy transforming into public action. Yet for every law enacted, for every organization founded, the boy remained lost. The city's pulse resumed its normal rhythm, indifferent on the surface, yet forever changed underneath. Each subway screech, each distant siren, a reminder of that singular morning. Folklore layer, urban legend merged with reality. Children daring each other to peek down alleyways where he was last seen. Shadows imagined in classrooms' playgrounds. The myth of the Milk Carton Boy growing alongside his absence. A spectral figure inhabiting the city's collective memory. Haunting, unseen, yet present. Fact and folklore entwined. The initial search, the police logs, the milk cartons, and the whispered tales, each layer feeding the next, creating a tapestry of anxiety, vigilance, and fear that would define Eaton Patz's story for decades. A city of millions, a single child lost. Streets echoing with questions yet giving no answers. The stage set for the human scenes, for the investigation that would stretch across decades, for the mystery that refused to fade. The Patz apartment was silent that evening, except for the ticking of the wall clock each second hammering into the hearts of Julie and Stanley. They had prepared breakfast, tucked Eaton's lunch into his backpack, and yet now the house felt hollow. The echoes of his small footsteps vanished into thin air. Julie paced the narrow hallway, eyes darting to the doorway. Every creak, every distant footstep sounded amplified. She called his name softly, then louder. Eaton. The letters trembling on her lips. The city beyond the window, unaware, unyielding, indifferent. Stanley retraced Eaton's intended route. The familiar streets twisted under the late afternoon light. The bodega at the corner, once just a mundane stop on his way, now a locus of dread. Neighbors looked on, eyes wide, hesitant to speak. A community drawn into the intimate horror of a family's unraveling. Fact-layer police interviews documented the early hours. Julie and Stanley's statements etched in typewriter ink. We don't know where he is. We don't know who would take him. Friends offered support. Neighbors canvassed blocks. The city mobilizing slowly, methodically, yet always a step behind. Reports noted dozens of volunteers, flyers plastered on lampposts, windows, bus stops, a nation beginning to realize the fragility of its innocence. The media descended, cameras flashing, reporters scribbling in notepads, Julie's face captured in grainy footage, eyes red-rimmed pleading, the family's agony broadcasted, yet somehow the boy remained missing. The story growing beyond their apartment, beyond Manhattan, into homes across America. Folklore layer shadows deepened as stories circulated. Children claimed to see him in mirrors, fleeting glimpses at school. Some spoke of feeling a cold presence in empty playgrounds. The legend of the Milk Carton Boy merging with the family's grief. A spectral figure haunting both memory and imagination. Neighbors recalled small, chilling moments. A door ajar when no one had entered. The bodega bell jingling in the absence of a customer, the ordinary infused with anxiety. Each passerby scrutinized, each moment pregnant with suspicion. The city became a participant in the human drama. Fact-layer volunteers organized searches, police coordinated canvassing. A catalog of tips emerged, some credible, some false. Jose Ramos, friend of Etan's former babysitter, questioned. Files noted his nervous demeanor, his uncorroborated whereabouts. The investigation stretched thin, each lead a thread tugged tentatively in the dark. Julie Patz kept a journal, each entry a raw testament. I can't stop imagining him walking the streets. I hear his small feet in the hallway. I see him in dreams that end too soon. Pages filled with anxiety, hope, and despair. A mother's grief transmuted into documentation. A record of human emotion as tangible as any police report. Folklore layer. In whispered corners of Manhattan, children dared each other to peek down alleyways. Playgrounds became stages for imagined sightings. The city itself seemed to murmur, Eaton, Eaton. a spectral presence threading through ordinary lives. Neighbors remembered him in the tiniest gestures, a shadow in the corner of a shop, a flicker of red in the subway, signs interpreted through grief, through fear, through longing. And the community rallied, fundraisers, vigils, posters. The human network expanding beyond the apartment, each neighbor, each passerby, a part of the effort to reclaim a lost child from the shadows. Yet despite the effort, despite the mobilization, Eaton remained absent. The human experience of loss became both intimate and collective. A family shattered, a neighborhood anxious, a city holding its breath, a nation observing, learning, fearing. The emotional heartbeat of the case now as palpable as the physical streets. Fact layer records from the period show thousands of calls, dozens of interviews, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children not yet founded yet, volunteers, ordinary citizens acting in its spirit. Each tip a hope, each false lead a blow, the human labor of grief and action intertwining. Julie and Stanley Patz carried on living between reality and nightmare. Every pedestrian glance, every open doorway, every abandoned bag on the sidewalk, potential clues, potential threats. Their lives irrevocably altered. The human scene of the disappearance sprawling into daily existence. Folklore layer. As years passed, the Milk Carton Boy legend grew. Stories told at dinner tables and classrooms. A child who walked into myth before the city could understand him. Grief transformed into narrative despair, into shared memory. Etan's absence, both documented and imagined fact and folklore entwined. And so the human scene unfolds. Grief action, hope rumor, all woven into the city's fabric. Each participant knowingly or unknowingly a witness to the ongoing absence. The stage now set for Fact 2, for the evidence and revelations that would come decades later, the tension building toward the payoff. Years passed, the city continued, life pulsating in subways and on sidewalks. Yet the question remained, where was Eaton Patz? Leads ran cold, tips ran thin. The case archived filed under unsolved, yet whispers lingered. Shadows in reports, hints in rumors, notes in diaries. Each a breadcrumb toward the truth. Fact layer. In 2010, decades after the disappearance, investigators reopened the case. A renewed determination spurred by technological advances and persistent public interest. Excavation began near a home in Soho, close to where young Eaton had been last seen. Shovels dug into earth that had lain undisturbed for 30 years. Each scoop a search for answers. The initial dig yielded nothing. No remains, no traces. Yet the media coverage sparked new leads. Citizens came forward. Old memories resurfaced. And one tip led detectives to a man long overlooked. Pedro Hernandez, then 18 years old, employed at the bodega near Etan's bus stop on that fateful morning. Fact layer. Hernandez had confessed in 1982 during an open church confessional to killing a young boy, his family aware the secret buried. Decades passed, until the excavation reminded them. Police interrogated Hernandez, carefully, deliberately, each question a probe into the past, each hesitation a crack in the facade. Finally, Hernandez admitted it, luring Eaton into the bodega, strangling him, placing his small body in a box, leaving it in a trash pile a few blocks away. The confession chilling, methodical, the details aligning with years of scattered reports and rumors. The single thread that tied all loose ends. Folklore layer. The shadow that had lingered in stories, the whispered sightings, the playground myths all converged with reality. The legend and the truth intersecting. The Milk Carton Boy now tangible in the narrative of horror. Proof that the imagined shadows had roots in fact. Police records detail the interrogation. Hernandez recounting movements, precise timings, the mundane streets of Manhattan transformed into a corridor of terror, a familiar cityscape turned ominous. Each corner, each doorway, each stoop, part of the chain that led to tragedy. Fact layer. Investigators corroborated his confession. Historical reports, witness statements, and archival notes all fitting into a single narrative. A 30-year-old disappearance finally accounted for. Eaton's fate grimly clear. Justice delayed but not denied. Hernandez charged, later convicted in 2017. The law finally acknowledging the tragedy. The city that had carried on through decades now paused. Newspapers recounted the confession, the trial, The Milk Carton Boy's face, once printed on cereal boxes, now a reminder of the fragility of childhood and the persistence of grief. Folklore layer. Urban legends faded as fact replaced rumor. Yet the ghostly aura remained. Stories continued to ripple. Children still whispered about shadows, yet now with knowledge of a man of actions, the myth evolving into cautionary truth. The payoff. The revelation came not in the hours after disappearance, but decades later. A family's grief validated, yet intensified. A city's long-held fear confronted, and the narrative of a missing boy now bound to the confession of a man. Eaton's story intertwined with the shadows of Manhattan, the folklore of whispered tales, and the meticulous records of law enforcement demonstrated the convergence of myth and fact. The enduring impact of a singular disappearance on a community, a city, a nation. Fact layer. The conviction underscored systemic lessons, child safety protocols, investigative persistence, the value of public vigilance. May 25th National Missing Children's Day took on renewed meaning. The Milk Carton Boy finally accounted for, yet the emotional echoes lingered. Julie and Stanley Patz, through decades of anguish, watched as the mystery unfolded into revelation. The human scene merged with the factual. Grief interlaced with closure, yet the absence remained palpable. The city itself a witness to both loss and justice. Folklore layer shadows still move in memory. The stories of vanished children, the imagined presences, the lessons whispered to young ones. Eaton's disappearance remains a cautionary tale, a ghostly presence turned historical fact, an intersection of lived experience, legend, and proof. And so the narrative threads converge. The payoff realized, the mystery solved, yet its impact rippling outward. Manhattan streets, the Milk Carton Boy, the confessions, the trial, all intertwined. A singular disappearance now permanently woven into the city's consciousness. The city exhaled, though not fully. Manhattan streets continued their ceaseless rhythm. Yet the echoes of one morning in 1979 lingered. The disappearance of Eaton Patz had left a scar on both the human and institutional memory. Fact layer following. Hernandez's conviction in 2017, families, investigators, and citizens reflected on decades of missed opportunities and the persistence of hope. New protocols in child safety reporting and public awareness had emerged in the intervening years. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children saw renewed relevance. May 25th, National Missing Children's Day, marked a dual memory, a commemoration of loss and a call to vigilance. Julie and Stanley Patz, after decades of uncertainty, felt the bittersweet weight of closure. The confirmation of their son's fate brought relief, but also the unshakable reminder of the years spent in limbo, a life lost too soon, a childhood ended in shadows. Folklore layer. Even after legal resolution, the city's collective memory held its own. Whispers of the Milk Carton Boy persisted. Children retold fragments of his story. Playgrounds became stages for cautionary tales. Adults spoke of fleeting shadows and unseen presences in the corners of their eyes, a ghostly resonance that neither conviction nor obituary could fully erase. Community action intensified. Parents spoke publicly, schools implemented safety walks, neighborhoods organized patrols. The case became emblematic of both vigilance and vulnerability. A singular disappearance transforming into a societal lesson. Fact layer documents and archives show a surge in missing children reports following renewed awareness. Investigative methods evolved. Cross-jurisdictional cooperation improved. Forensic technology advanced. All inspired in part by Eaton's case, yet the emotional toll remained deeply personal for those directly affected. Media coverage revisited the story frequently. Retrospectives in newspapers, magazines, and television explored both the investigative triumph and the human suffering. The Milk Carton Boy became both historical artifact and enduring symbol. Folklore layer legends adapted. The shadow that once lurked in whispered sightings became a metaphor. The boy who vanished on a Manhattan morning became emblematic of innocence, lost, a spectral figure haunting the collective imagination. Stories told to children now carried lessons of awareness, empathy, and caution. Families connected. Survivor networks, advocacy groups, and public organizations found inspiration in Eaton's story. Each anniversary, each mention in media sparked discussions. Vigilance turned into ritual. Remembrance turned into cultural consciousness. Yet the personal echoes remained. Neighbors recalled strange sensations, fleeting glimpses that felt like Eton passing through the city's fabric. A mother's anxiety reflected in other families' eyes. A community marked forever by absence. Fact layer. Legal ramifications endured. Hernandez's imprisonment provided judicial closure. Police departments reviewed decades of procedural gaps. Policymakers integrated lessons into child protection laws. Public awareness campaigns flourished. The case became a benchmark in missing child investigations. Julie Patz continued advocacy, speaking at schools and events, sharing memories of her son, turning grief into education, into proactive engagement. The human narrative persisting alongside the factual record. Folklore layer. Urban mythology blended with historical reality. Playground tales of children vanishing and reappearing, shadows along West Broadway remembered by residents. Eton's story lived on in both factual recounting and whispered legend. The Milk Carton Boy, a permanent haunting fixture in the city's consciousness. The aftershocks of that morning in May 1979 radiated outward, touching families, shaping policies, altering perceptions, yet always carrying the intangible weight of loss. The quiet grief beneath the city's ceaseless rhythm, a narrative simultaneously concluded and never-ending. The echoes of Eton Patz reached far beyond Manhattan, across the nation, inspiring vigilance legislation and cultural memory. Yet the human heart knows the void remains. The absence felt by parents, neighbors, citizens. A spectral reminder of innocence interrupted. And so the stage is set for the final act, the outro, where questions linger, where shadows remain, where viewers are left to consider the fragility of childhood, the persistence of memory, and the haunting legacy of a boy who walked away from home one morning, never to return. The city exhales again, yet the air feels heavier. Manhattan's streets shimmer under streetlights, casting long shadows across sidewalks. Corners once familiar now seem unfamiliar. A ghost lingers in memory, a child's absence echoing through decades. Fact layer. Pedro Hernandez's conviction brought legal closure. Yet the archival files, police reports, and media coverage reveal more than a single narrative. They document human persistence, investigative tenacity, and societal transformation. May 25th marked each year as National Missing Children's Day, an enduring reminder of vigilance, of attention, of the fragile trust placed in the everyday routines of children. Julie and Stanley Patz lived through decades of uncertainty. Every creak in their apartment, every subway rumble, a reminder of the singular morning when the ordinary became extraordinary. A routine walk transformed into a national tragedy. The human heart stretched thin across years of hope and despair. Folklore layer, urban legends endure. The Milk Carton Boy still walks in whispers. Children dare each other to imagine him at the corners of streets. Playgrounds echo with the myth. Shadows shift in unexpected places. Eton's image, once frozen on a cereal box, now a permanent fixture in the collective imagination. Both legend and truth intertwined. The city's pulse continues, commuters, vendors, tourists, unaware of the historical weight beneath their feet. Yet for those who remember, every step is measured, every fleeting shadow a question. What is seen and what remains unseen? Fact layer. The investigation, though resolved, continues to teach. Law enforcement departments study the case as a benchmark. Advocacy groups use it to educate. Policies evolved. Technology improved. All ripples stemming from the singular disappearance of one child. A tragedy converted into lessons, protocols, vigilance, yet never erasing grief. Community responses endure. Anniversaries marked. Stories recounted in classrooms. Safety campaigns reinforced. Parents whisper warnings to their children. Watch the streets. Notice everything. The human experience of loss transformed into a societal consciousness, a cultural echo that refuses to fade. Folklore layer, shadows remain. Stories linger. Eton's presence is felt in peripheral vision, fleeting glimpses in memory, in playgrounds, in conversations. The Milk Carton Boy has become both warning and myth, spectral yet grounded, a narrative existing between life and legend, between fact and fear. And so we are left with questions. How many other children vanished quietly, their stories absorbed by the city, the nation, the whispers of urban legend? How many mysteries remain unsolved, waiting in the margins of memory and record, shadows of what could have been? As you watch this, consider the streets you walk, the children who pass by unseen, the routines that hide potential danger, and the vigilance required. For the singular disappearance of one child changed the consciousness of a city, a nation, a world. Eaton Patz's story ends legally, yet it continues culturally, socially, psychologically. A memory, a legend, a cautionary tale. The Milk Carton Boy who walked 2 blocks and never returned, leaving an imprint that time cannot erase. You've just witnessed another story from Channel Name. One file among many, one shadow among millions. If you want to explore more mysteries hidden in plain sight, subscribe, share, and reflect. Consider what lingers in the corners of your own city. The absences, the whispers. The stories waiting to be uncovered. The streets are quiet now, yet they never truly forget, and neither should we.